the work of Dan O'Brien, Hazelstrom, Pete Moon, Mary Swander obviously influenced you in your early writing and publishing life. How did you make their work, or how did their work inform your own? And then how's their work specifically then still relevant to you in your current writing life? Now all these years removed from Not Just Any Land, and who are you reading now, and how are they shaping your work?
Yeah. Well, that book is a little bit like a Pilgrim's Progress. Like each of these authors represent a different way into a connection to place. Dan O'Brien introduced me to a kind of wild dimension to the landscape that I did not appreciate, mainly the appreciation of predators and his love of the falcons. And Midwesterners are not used to thinking about this place as having predators and identifying with them. We're all about deer and nice animals that behave themselves for the most part, except when it comes to gardening. But there was this other, Steph comes from Idaho, where people, when they go camping, they gotta watch out for bears, and they have to be respectful of that. And we don't, we don't have that here. Although this is where Dan O'Brien kind of comes back to me, is the return of the mountain lions to this area, which I write a little bit about in Daddy Longlegs. But it was just so interesting to see Omaha start to imagine the presence of a large predator in its midst when that mountain lion got shot. And it lived, and now it's at the Omaha Zoo. But they're coming back. And for a while there, this was front page news, like how to take your garbage out without getting attacked by a mountain lion.
Yeah.
It was just, I laughed about it, and at the same time, it was like, this is what I'm talking about, right? That foreign feeling of us being, meeting our match in the natural world, and having to act in a respectful manner that's enforced on us by the presence of predators. So he's come back to me that way. Linda Hazelstrom, I'm still in contact with. She's still writing beautiful stuff. She just had a poetry collection come out with Twyla Hansen, which I had the pleasure to write a blurb for and read. She's still on the ranch. So what I wrote about in that book, about that deep personal commitment to place, that was what really she revealed to me. What does it mean when you don't make any separation between the self and the land on which you grew up, and what it means to potentially lose that? I had no concept of that until I met her and was introduced to her work, and she's still doing that. William Leasty Moon I haven't had contact with since then, but he's still living there and still writing great stuff about the Midwest. And that book, Prairie Earth, remains, I think, one of the most important books on prairie ever written, and just place-based writing. It's a vertical narrative and deep mapping, and I'm glad to see that work and that concept is being written about more by scholars. My friend and colleague Sue Marr, who's now dean up in Duluth, University of Duluth, wrote a book just recently called Deep Mapping on the Plains, in which that concept is used to explore and evaluate literature. Mary and I are still, Mary Swander are still good friends. She, what I thought was so profound about her work is, again, there was like Mary, or like Linda, she had this deep connection to place, but it was at the cellular level. She had environmental illness, still has it. She moved close to the Amish because there were fewer poisons in the atmosphere and in the surrounding area that would cause her to have allergic reactions and so forth. She nearly died from it. But she could have moved elsewhere. She could have gone to a place that was healthier for her, but she didn't. And in part it was because she saw in the landscape a kind of sibling almost, who was going through similar things that she was. Her body had been poisoned, and she was trying to recover from that, and here was this landscape, this home that had been poisoned, also trying to make its way back. And she's now the poet laureate of Iowa, great things, and still community-based, literature for community. She's out there doing her plays, one about farming, food production, another one about immigrants who have come here from Southeast Asia, made a home. So, just amazing stuff she's doing still. They're all an inspiration. But since then, I've become aware that there's a much larger community of writers like that who are writing about the Midwest, the current and ex-grasslands, and we've found each other. Two I would mention would be Tom Montgomery Fate, who's out of Chicago, is born in Iowa, and I love his work. He had a book come out from Beacon called Cabin Fever, and it's about suburban wildlife in the Midwest, in Chicago specifically, but also about a cabin that he built up in Michigan and trying to live the Thoreauvian life and test it out. What if Thoreau was married and had kids and lived in a city? What would that look like? That's his sort of working thesis. Really beautiful book. And then Julene Baer, who's farther west than me. She grew up in Kansas, in Goodland, Kansas, and now lives in Colorado. But her book just came out, which is about the Ogallala Aquifer. It's called the Ogallala Road, a memoir of love and reckoning. So it's about groundwater use by her family and the wastefulness of that, and yet her love for that land and that place and her dependency on that income at one point, and also about falling in love with a cowboy. And so it's just really interesting. But it was just published by Vikings. So, and with the I think it's because of in part it's beautiful writing, but also because of the pipeline. Suddenly everyone was interested in that, and she writes the personal story. So those are two examples of people that are writing and working and